Suns preseason is over. Entertaining game last night. Goes to overtime. Hot shooting by Dalton Connect.
Say that again.
The Lakers to the win. Here to talk Suns preseason and we get ready for the season opener from Arizona Sports at Night. Empire of the Suns, ArizonaSports.com. Kellan Olson joins us here on the Arizona Sports Line. Kellan, I think Dalton Connect just hit another three-pointer.
Yeah, guys, I actually just slept at Footprint Center last night. I'm still here. There's a 15th replay review that they just did. There was, I think, the 7th challenge of the fourth quarter here. I just,
Another flagrant foul.
Yeah.
Bronny.
Nothing like preseason games that go forever, Kellan. We know that.
So much fun.
All right, what'd you take out of the preseason? We got a little lull before the real fun begins. What are the headlines, in your opinion?
Yeah, just a change in vibes around the team, for one, and I know that a lot of teams have that headline coming out of the preseason and coming out of training camp, so I do not recommend people read a ton into it. But with that being said, it's just obvious the amount of camaraderie that is being shown, both on the floor and off the floor, but particularly on the floor. You just look at some of the moments of not only ball movement, but just overall mental engagement on the floor in the preseason I'm talking about, by the way. It's just they've made such strides compared to last season, which the comparison that I made in my recap last night is like holding the door open for someone who's never had the door held open for them before. It's like this everyday courtesy. It's like, yeah, every team is supposed to get along and like each other and not be miserable to watch. But this team is apparently looking like it's not going to be miserable to watch, unlike last year's team, which was just, you guys remember that same story. You guys were coming into your shows in January, February, March, and April, kind of saying the same stuff for months and months about how the team looked, and this was one of those situations, and looks to be one of those situations where they've corrected that, and that is just going to do a world of good for them. Obviously, the three-pointers, I know the numbers were down yesterday, but the willingness to shoot them for the most part we've seen over the preseason has been pretty good, and it's just going to be interesting to see how much the rookies get involved. Brian Dunn has obviously been the story of the preseason so far. He didn't so much come down to earth last night as had more of a normal type of night that we expect from him, but also Iguodala will probably be involved as well, and it'll be interesting to see how much Budenholzer implements them.
Love to get your thoughts on what you took in from the first Jusuf Nurkic experience of this year. Looked slimmer, shot the three, did some good things. I think there was some rust there too, but what did you take away from Nurk's performance and how he fits into this whole thing?
Yeah, he admitted last night that there was some rust for him. He thought in the second half is really when he started to get going and started to feel like himself again. It was just such a different element to not so much have him out on the perimeter where he was for most of the night last night, but having him shoot in those situations, and also just the threat of when the ball comes over to him, he's not just sitting there waiting for someone to come over and run a dribble handoff with him. Like, he's going to shoot the ball if he's open for the most part. I think there was one or two times where he hesitated, but he said last night it's a world of difference just having the coaches and players have the full level of confidence in him and telling him he can take as many threes as he wants this year. They want him to shoot the ball, and that is just going to open up a ton. I thought Devin Booker was really emphatic with the way that he talked about it last night and just how much changes when they have a stretch element to their big man. And they're just going to have a lot more room out there. Now, it's going to be some interesting process here because Jusuf Nurkic is going to be open from three all year, so you can't have him taking 7, 8, 9 a game, and you saw him not take one or two last night that maybe you want him to take, maybe you don't want him to take, but he's going to be around that 2 to 4 mark a game. He knows how to balance that pretty well. And if he's just hitting like 33, 34% of those, you'll take that. The issue was last year he was around 27% at the midway point of the year. That's when they cut off his water and stopped having him shoot. I don't think that'll happen this year regardless of what he's shooting. I think they're going to have him stick with it, but he needs to knock him down, and it's been good to see him moving around the way that he has. He said the weight loss was mostly a precautionary thing just for his health and to try and be as healthy as possible going forward and maintain injuries better. But whatever he was doing last year worked, so he should be even better at it this year.
All right, so I know there's a lot of reset optimism on Planet Orange. A lot of people are stoked about this team. I'm curious, how big of the liabilities are the size of the starting lineup and the lack of a rim protector here, and maybe some defensive shortcomings that might come from this group?
Yeah, they're legitimate, Dan, and I think a lot of those problems, are more things you forecast for the postseason, which is why I think it's pretty easy to be optimistic about this team and look at it and say, I think they're going to win 53 games this year. I think that they're going to be really, really good in the regular season, just given Bud's track record, given how so much went wrong last year, and they got so little out of this team last year that it's kind of hard not to be optimistic about them this year. But you're right. You saw it like last night. Like I love Oso Guidaro, and I think that he's going to be a good NBA player for a really long time, either off the bench or as a spot starter at times for teams as a 5. But you saw the limited size there with not only him on the floor, but even Nurk on the floor, and some of the rebounding issues that they're going to have, like the connectivity that they're going to have defensively. The mental engagement is just going to have to be there at all times. Like they cannot slip up. Like there are teams that are designed in certain ways where guys like Booker, guys like Beal, guys like Durant don't have to be mentally locked in at all times defensively. That is not the luxury they are afforded with the way that this team is designed. All those guys are going to have their most consistent defensive years in a couple of years, and rebounding the ball as well. We saw the rebounding get to them a little bit last night too. I think those are going to be themes for us throughout the season, and it's going to be tough enough for them to get stopped. So if they're giving up just free points inside because they're too small or giving up offensive rebounds, that's when it'll really catch up to them. But at the same time, they just have this incredible offensive ceiling that I think we've seen them show at times this preseason as well.
Kellan Olson, co-host of Arizona Sports at Night, Empire of the Suns. He joins us here on the Arizona Sports Line. Bradley Beal is obviously a player under the microscope. He's, part of a 3-guard rotation, even though he's going to get listed as a forward in that starting lineup for as long as he's in the starting lineup. And I think we saw some not so great things from Bradley Beal last night in that preseason finale against the Lakers. I mean, how much pressure do you think is on Bradley Beal to remain in that starting lineup long term?
Yeah, the starting lineup spot, maybe not so much, but just I think the pressure is on him. I think he's the key to all of this, guys. I know that a lot of people hate hearing the term big three. I'm sorry, it's a big three. And if you look at how successful big threes are or unsuccessful they are, it's never the first or the second guy in the big three. It's always the third guy. Like you think to Chris Bosh, you think to Monta Ginobili, you think to Draymond Green. I'm not saying Bradley Beal has to be to that level of how those guys succeeded in that role, but that third banana role is always the trickiest and requires guys to really find this difficult footing that I think Brad did actually find at times last year. It's just every time it happened, he got elbowed in the face by Miles Turner or Dante DiVincenzo undercut him and he sprained his ankle. Like he kept just getting bad luck with injuries, and that obviously can't happen this year because he needs to get a rhythm in this role. And if he does, I think it's going to allow Devin Booker and Kevin Durant to succeed in the areas that they need to the most, where they need to fill in the gaps as well. Because if Brad is filling in those gaps, it puts less pressure on Book and KD to feel the need to do that, and they can just do it more naturally. And the thing about this, guys, is like this goes beyond this year because you look at this team in the long-term picture of it over 3-4 years. It's Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. And if Brad is still a really great player, this thing can keep churning for a couple of years. But if Brad is not a really great player, all of a sudden you've got Devin Booker and whatever else, and we know the path that could lead down. Yeah. So Brad is just the X factor on this team for so many different reasons, and a few of them I just listed right there.
Kellan, great stuff as always,
Thank you,
man.
KL.
We appreciate the time today.
Thanks, guys.
Kellan Olson, you can read his stuff on ArizonaSports.com, the Empire of the Suns podcast, Arizona Sports at Night. Busy man. He joined us on the Arizona Sports Line.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.